You are now listening to Testimonies with Terry.
All right, guys. Well, I am here with the founder and lead singer of Seventh Day Slumber, as well as the founder of Rockfest Records, Joseph Rojas. Joseph, thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, this is really cool for me, dude, because, man, I got saved back in 2010. And one of my friends had loaded up a flash drive full of Christian music for me to listen to because I didn't have any. And to be honest, it was hard to get through a lot of it. But then I came across an album called Take Everything. And I listened to the song Mighty to Save. And I'm just like, yes, this is my music here. This is my kind of music. And man, it just really spoke to me, and it opened up my mind that worship doesn't just have to be, you know, softer songs, piano led, but you can put a rock twist on them. And just thank you so much, man, for just all that you do with your music, but just that moment in time specifically really spoke to me.
Hey, thank you for sharing that with me. That's why we do it. You know, I've been doing it a long time, and I can tell you right now, if it wasn't for encouragement like that and hearing, you know, those kinds of stories, it'd be tough to just keep, you know, fame is not enough to continue doing this for as long as I've done it and going through the ups and downs of the music industry. You know, fame is not enough. There has to be a bigger purpose.
Amen, man. Amen. And man, I'm excited to dig into your story here. I know that you got a pretty wild story. And typically my first question with guest is, where did you grow up? But I know where you grew up. You grew up in Victoria, Texas. And when I saw that, I've been a lifelong WWE fan, and my mind went straight to, man, that's where Stone Cold Steve Austin's from. And so I just got to ask, man, have you had any encounters with the Texas rattlesnake?
I have not, man. He's a guy that I have wanted to meet since we're from the same hometown. And obviously you can't be from Victoria, Texas and not know who he is. But I've never had the privilege of meeting him. I've met a lot of wrestlers, from Ted DiBiase to Sting to The Undertaker to Chris Jericho to you name it. But to meet, you know, Stone Cold Steve Austin, that's, you know, being from Victoria, that's a big deal, and I haven't had that opportunity yet, but I believe I will get to meet the man.
Amen, man. And hey, let's pray for an opportunity to witness to him as well while we're at it, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, Joe, like I said, I know you've got a pretty wild story, and I know that it starts out pretty early in your life. So let's kind of start with just family life for you growing up. What was that like?
It was rough, you know. I mean, I was raised by a single mother on a single mother's income, and she wasn't getting any child support from our dad, who had left the country. My dad was in the Air Force, and so I was born in California on an Air Force base, and so while he was in the Air Force, and we, you know, lived in the Philippines, we lived, you know, in California and other places. But while he was in the Air Force, he was drinking a lot, beat on my mom a lot, cheated on her constantly. And finally she had enough and wanted to get out of that relationship. She was tired of being beat and treated that way. But when she wanted to leave, he beat on her real bad. I was probably about 3.5, 4 years old. And I remember sitting on the floor seeing it happen. My brother is a year and a half older than me. And, you know, we're still little toddlers. We couldn't do anything to help. But even in my late 40s, I still remember that. And that never left my mind. So my mom raised us. My dad got kicked out of the Air Force, not for that, actually, for something else. And he ended up having to try to find a job somewhere, and he took a job overseas, working with for an oil company. But he never called us, never wrote, never we were growing up wondering what our dad even looks like, what he sounds like. Does he think about us? Has he ever thought about us? Does he have any other kids? Is he married? You know, those are the things I was growing up with. And all the while, here's a single mom trying to raise two boys into men, and by herself. No income except for what she can bring in. And my mom worked hard. She sold furniture at a couple of different places, but she worked at Sears for over 20 years, and they when there was a Sears, they used to have um, a furniture department, and that furniture department actually had, you know, nice furniture, and you know, it wasn't like I mean, it was good quality furniture back then. So my mom was able to get a commission, and they could sell it for, you know, a decent price, and she would make a small commission. Would. That's how she made her money, is selling furniture at Sears. You don't get a big salary. You work on commission. So if you don't sell, you don't make any money. So my mom spent hours every day she'd work at Sears in the mall, and so she did what she could to raise us. But it was tough. No, you know, no birthday cards, no letters from your dad, seeing other kids camping or playing in the front yard with their dad. Those are tough things, you know, to see. I eventually started running with the wrong crowd at a young age too.
Yeah, Joe, I'm curious, was there a certain point where you maybe just accepted that I guess dad isn't coming back?
Yeah, I mean, I did, and it was probably, you know, when I was probably about 12. Because you always kind of hope that maybe he would show up. The crazy thing about this is, you know, and I'm going to put some people on blast here because it just is what it is.
Yeah.
But you know, my grandparents on my dad's side kind of aided and abetted him coming in and out of the United States, and not undetected, and not being able to, like, for us to know he was in town. So we could never, he flew in and out of the United States many times over those years. But our grandparents on his side never told us. They'd hide him. They'd fly him in. He would avoid, you know, paying child support that way. I mean, you know, it's a rough thing when you get older. When you get to be about 12, 13, 14 years old, you start understanding that this man had to jump a whole lot of hoops just in order to not help you with school shoes. That's a trip, man, when you think about it.
Yeah.
And it's hurtful, and it hurt me badly. And into my 20s and 30s, even after becoming a Christian, and, you know, I've found healing, and you know, God has healed my broken heart and restored me, you know, and I hurt for those that go through it now, because I know what I went through. And now I'm a dad of my own, and we can talk about that in a little bit, and what that looks like and feels like. But man, when you come to the realization that you had a dad who literally went through every, you know, he jumped every obstacle in order to not have to see you. That's a painful realization, man. But my grandparents, they would come have us over at their house, and I remember when they would invite us for Christmas or whatever, they would always forget that we were coming. So all the other kids, like, my dad had 5 brothers, I believe, 4 maybe, and 2 sisters. And all those kids, there would be Christmas presents. When we'd go over there, they'd all be opening Christmas presents. And then here's, like, my grandpa, who was actually a pretty cool guy. And you could tell he genuinely felt bad. And I can't imagine the talks he had with his son, my dad, about, like, dude, like, you're wrong. But my grandmother was always on his side. But my grandpa would come and like hand us a puzzle, and he'd always forget to like take the 25-cent tag off of it, that because they got it at a garage sale. And even one year he gave my brother and I this puzzle and VO5 uh, shampoo. For like a 12-year-old kid. Like I'm afraid of showers at 12, at 11. And so he comes, and my grandpa really did have a big heart, but he was conflicted, he was torn, but but you know, when you get a puzzle that still says 25 cents on it and a bottle of shampoo that's VO5, which is probably good back then, but at the end of the day, everybody else is getting trucks and Barbies and things like that. You realize you don't really feel loved, you realize that you weren't thought about.
Yeah. Well, and I can't even imagine, man, just the effect that that had on your self-esteem, even at that point. And you mentioned, you ended up running with the wrong crowd, and I'm sure the self-esteem problems just coincided with that. But before we talk about that, I'm curious, what was your relationship like with your mom growing up? She was the only one raising you, but also it sounds like gone a lot because she had to be. She had to be working and providing for you guys. What was that relationship with your mom like growing up?
My mom's amazing. My mom lives 2 miles from me right now. And
Awesome.
I'm in Nashville now. That was in Victoria, Texas. And my mom is amazing. She always did what she could to make sure we had something on our birthday, something on Christmas, Valentine's Day, even. She would always make us. I still remember it. She would make a white cake, kind of buttercream icing with red hots on it, in the shape of hearts. And she would always make that for us, and she did what she could. She worked a lot of hours. She couldn't be there all the time, but she did what she could for us, man. And she always let us know that, we were first in her life. And so my mom didn't smile a whole lot. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a mom who's raising two boys on her own kind of stressed out way. So my mom didn't do a whole lot of smiling, or she laughed, and could joke with us and with the family, with her sisters and those kind of things. But what I'm saying is, a lot of times I could just see how stressed out she was throughout the day trying to raise two boys. But we had and have a great relationship with our mom, my brother and I both. And we know, even especially now as we've gotten older, what she's had to endure to raise two men. Me running out and doing the things that I did, it had nothing to do with me lashing out on my mom. It had to do with the fact that, as a matter of fact, she was the reason I felt so guilty when I was doing the things I was doing. It's because I hated hurting her like that. She didn't raise us that way. But my brother was an introvert, and I went the other way. Like, our pain stemmed from a lot of different reasons, not just my dad leaving. It also stemmed from being beat by babysitters, abused. A word abuse means abnormal use.
Yep.
And to be abused by a babysitter who's supposed to protect you. Our mom trusted her. Trusted, a couple of them. One of them used to beat us, kick us, call us the worst names. I'm talking about names you wouldn't even call somebody you didn't like and weren't in a fight, because you'd feel like that would be crossing the line. Like, you can't come back from saying these certain things. Just say the worst things, man. Like, you would almost rather be hit than to be called some of those things, or told some of those things, about you're the reason your dad left, and all these different things and horrible things to tell a kid. But I gotta say, my brother got the worst of it out of the two. I mean, he was getting beat more because he was older, and finally was beat so bad that my mom, there was no way to hide it, and my mom found out and took us out of there. And then we went and stayed with another babysitter who was a friend of my mom's, and her 18-year-old son abused my brother in a different way while I was in the room. And so,
Man.
so those are things that mess you up, man. You're talking about things that adults can't even process. And here are little kids, 8 years old, 7 years old, whatever, trying to process something that is really not made to be processed, at least not for a kid,
Yeah.
So that made me, it made me just want to get away. My brother escaped to his room, and his computer games that he had, and that kind of thing. That was his escape. And I escaped by hitting the streets, man, and just hanging out with the wrong crowd, drugs, alcohol, anything that could numb the pain. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, and I see that a lot with people that they fall into that crowd because they're always so accepting, right? When you look at like the cliques in school and stuff like that, it always seems like the druggies, the burnouts, the people that are drinking are generally the most open and accepting for people welcoming into their clique or crowd. And so, as far as growing up, not having maybe strong father figures, or I don't know what your friends were like growing up, but finding acceptance and being maybe liked for who you were in that group, did that mean a lot to you? Was that very appealing to you?
Yeah, I mean, you feel like maybe you're on the same level playing field because you're with other people that have problems just like you, and maybe don't have a mom or don't have a dad, or they do have a mom and dad, but they're alcoholics or whatever, and so they're running out of the house, and we're all hanging out at the park, whatever. But you don't feel as judged, I guess, and you don't feel like you have to measure up because you're with a bunch of people that are hurting the way that you're hurting, and that's the communication. That's there's relatability there, but you can communicate on that level of pain. But what's funny about that is that I was in football too, and there were kids with dads in there, and they were good kids, and I ended up having to drop out because I was high all the time and stuff. But those kids were good kids, and they were good to us. But you got to realize that as I got older, I realized a lot of those kids were in a lot of pain too, and several of them aren't here today. They took their own lives. And these are kids with a mom and a dad, and dad is a doctor, and those kinds of things. So pain is universal. We all experience pain on some level, and where me losing a dad may be my pain, that I go, dude, you can't comprehend this level of pain. And I say losing a dad, he was there, but I didn't have him.
Yeah.
To where somebody else who brings home an F to their household, that's the worst thing in life for them. And I realized that, for me, I'm like, dude, you brought home an F, dude. Like, that's nothing compared to what I went through. But to that kid who has to live up to his daddy's expectations or his mom's expectations, and it could literally mean not getting love and affection, that being withheld from that child for bringing home an F or a D or a B even. Um, you know, we have to be careful of how we judge other people's pain, because you don't know what that other person is going through. People have taken their lives because they didn't feel like they could measure up to what other people wanted them to be, including parents.
Yeah, man, that's so good. It just reminds me of the phrase that nobody wins the comparison game.
It's true.
And like you said, man, just who are we to judge someone else's pain? And obviously you were in a lot of pain, Joe. That's why you were turning to drugs and to alcohol. And is that what your high school years were kind of filled with, is just getting high, getting wasted? What did those teenage years look like for you?
Well, yeah, I spent a lot of my teenage years hanging out with friends that got high, drank, we partied, we fought a lot, did a lot of that stuff, stealing, robbing, just a pretty rough crowd. But my mom would always like just try to reel me back in. She put me in a behavioral. Well, I was looking at like some jail time, and I was already stealing and doing all kinds of stuff. And my mom was like, "This kid's gonna be in prison if I don't get him some help." And she also knew I was hurting real bad. And she understood that. My mom always understood that my brother and I were really dealing with a lot. And so she sent me to this behavioral center that I, had to be locked in for like 3 months, kind of like a juvenile detention center alternative kind of thing. And, she did everything she could, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Just really trying to keep me here,
Yeah, man.
Had to be tough on her. I know I did. But, and we weren't raised in a Christian household either. So, the power of prayer wasn't really a talked about thing or practiced in our household. My mom believed in God, like, kind of like you. She believed in God and believed you shouldn't rob and steal, and someone created us. His name is God, and has a son named Jesus who died, and and this kind of thing, but
Yep.
that was about it. She didn't have a relationship with Jesus. But when I was 18, my mom had an encounter with Jesus, and that began to change a lot for me. Not right off the bat, but like I said, through my teenage years, I spent a lot of time getting high. I actually even hung out with a guy who was a Christian. I didn't believe like he believed, but eventually I kind of did pretend I believed like he believed, so I could continue going to that church because there were some cool people there, and he was the sickest guitar player I had ever met, which for the viewers and listeners, sickest doesn't mean bad. It's good. Like bad means good. Like he was bad, he was
Right.
good. So he was the sickest guitar player I'd ever seen, and he was a Christian. I was like, dude, this guy is ripping solos that I don't know anybody in all the local bands I was messing around with. I started playing guitar when I was 12. I got my first Sears and Roebuck guitar when I was 12. My mom ordered it from the Sears and Roebuck catalog because she got like 25% off. And but anyway, so I couldn't afford lessons, so we all were horrible. All the guys that I played in the bands with, and it was horrid. And some still think we are, but my buddy David, he was a Christian. I was in art class with him, and that's how I met this dude. He was an amazing like comic book sketcher, and then he invited me to his house. His dad was a music minister at a Baptist church. He invited me to his house, and it was a nice house. He had all this nice equipment, and dude, I'd go spend the night at his crib, and he would be like trying to minister to me. That was the gist of it, but I just, it's hard to, cause he was depressed all the time. It's hard to want to, leave what I got, which was nothing, drugs, depression, self-hate. It was hard to leave that for all of that and still believe that there's something bigger than me. Like, if there's something bigger than me, why does he still feel that way? So at least I can numb my pain. He has to sit through his and still not be happy. Like, if you believe in God and you still feel that way, there is no hope. And there's no hope for somebody like me, because I don't, I mean, I'm not a Christian, but even if I was like, look at all the things I've done, but this guy's lived a good life. I mean, he has a mom and dad who go to church, and he believes in God, and still he would tell me almost every day that he thought about taking his life all the time. Every single day he'd be like, the only reason I'm here, man, is because if I don't want to go to hell. And I'm like, dude, and you want me to be a Christian? Like, I'm not going to, I thought, like, if you give your life to Jesus, I don't mean you're supposed to be happy all the time, but I thought there's supposed to be like hope that comes with that. And not just like, now I'm not going to kill myself because I got to wait, till it's my time to die because I don't want to go to hell. Like, no, I don't want to live like that. If you believe in God and you're still that depressed, then I'm going to not believe in God and be able to numb it with alcohol and drugs. And that made sense to me. It makes sense to me now.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me now. Like, why would somebody want what I have in Jesus if my attitude about life and everything is no different than theirs?
That's so good.
Like, I get being depressed and being a Christian. I get being unhappy at times and being a Christian. I get having difficult times and sadness and depression even as a Christian. I get it. I've been there, actually. And we can talk about that in a little bit, but man, living your life broken, empty, depressed, lost, and ministering to me about Jesus, I don't get that. So, I know we went off into a whole other topic, but that still kind of led me going to do the things I was doing, because it never really, it couldn't convert me. You can't convince me if you are no happier than I am. And, because like I said, the difference between you and me is you believe in God, and I don't. And then the other difference is I can numb my pain and you can't, because you have this God to adhere to. So you won't drink, you won't use drugs, you won't cuss, you won't smoke cigarettes, you won't do nothing. You're just going to be empty, broken, lost, sad all the time, and scared to take your life so you don't go to hell. And me, on the other hand, I believe that I'm probably going to hell. I believe that maybe there is a God. He doesn't like me, and I'm going to numb that out, and at least I can drink and use drugs. Like, to me, that makes sense. If from a salesperson standpoint, at least,
Yep.
it's not very appealing what he was selling to me. And, but what's cool is that in the middle of all of this, here's my mom going through changes, and she's meeting people who are Christians, and at work and at different places, and she gets invited to go to church. And she wouldn't go because my mom believed that if she went to any other church other than a Catholic church, which she didn't go to regularly, by the way, that that she would go to hell. And she told me that. Like, I'm hanging out with my buddy David, and he's like, dude, come to this Baptist camp, with us. And I wanted to go because I want to hang out with other kids, and they were pretty cool. And there were a few hot chicks at that place. And I was like, honey, I'm sorry. She's listening to the podcast. But they weren't hotter than you. But
there you go.
Anyway,
cover yourself.
But no, it's crazy because I wanted to go because I was a young man, and I'm like, these are good girls, and da da da. But my mom she didn't want me to go. She finally let me go to a couple of those camps, but she didn't want me to go. She would tell me that I can't go to any other place other than Catholic thing. And I'm like, I don't even believe in God. And she's like, well, I don't care. I said, I'm an atheist. She's like, I don't care. You're atheist Catholic then, but you're not going. So my mom was scared to death to go to another church, but she was hurting for me badly. She was looking for help from me so badly that she was thinking about going to these churches. And I had been arrested, and I'd been in trouble with the law as a kid, but this time I'm 18. I'm looking at, jail time, maybe prison time. Got arrested. I don't even remember what that one was for. I've been arrested over 20 times.
Wow.
And I'm ashamed of that, by the way. I'm not saying that as like, yeah, I've been arrested 20 times, badge of honor. I wish I never was arrested, but so is life, right? Decisions.
Part of your story.
And yeah, it's part of my story. So here I am, and my mom's scared to death. She's brokenhearted. She thinks her son's going to possibly go to prison. Or even worse, die out, doing the things I'm doing. So she finally went to church with this lady, and my mom risked going to hell. I always say that. My mom risked going to hell in order to save her son. And when you say that, it sounds kind of like, if you were to just say it without any context, it sounds like that doesn't sound right. But in my mom's mind, there was a chance she could go to hell if she went to this church. But the alternative is that her son was going to die if she didn't at least try to find some help at this place. Wow. And so when you think about that in those terms, it's mind-blowing if you really just try to comprehend what that looks like. Like, yeah. I'm scared to death to go to hell, but I don't want to see my son die, and this could help. And maybe that whole hell thing with this thing about the church, and that is not true. And maybe there really is this relationship with Jesus that I can have personally instead of a middleman, and I don't even know. And like, I could just imagine the things going through her mind. Yeah. But she went, and my mom had an encounter with Jesus. She gave her heart to the Lord, and
come on,
she began to pray for me. She came to that jail. She'd come visit me. Have to talk to me, get patted down like a dog. The sweetest woman you ever met, man. My mom, amazing. And she'd get patted down like a dog, man. To come to see me and get yelled at by, the staff there. You need to get, put your purse over here, those kinds of things. Talk to me on that nasty phone through this glass. And she would smile, and she'd tell me, Jesus has a plan for you, mijo. She would call me mijo. That means my son in Spanish. I don't know why she would say that, because we're German, but no, I'm kidding. We're not. But she'd say, mijo, God has a plan for you, and you have to give your heart to him and stuff. And that made me think. Because I can tell you, whether I believed in God or not, I can't tell you at that moment. I would always say I was an atheist. I never, I really don't believe in atheists. I'm going to be honest,
Yep. Same here, man.
And I believe that there are agnostics, like you don't know if there's a God, but but I don't believe in atheists, and if they're atheists watching, I don't mean to offend you, but that's just facts. That was me. And so I was never sure. Even when I would say I was an atheist, I was just never sure if there was a God. And if there was, I knew he hated me. Like, and I know so many atheists that are like, well, I'm atheist because I hate God. If there's and you think about that, it's not that you really don't believe in God. It's that you think he doesn't like you, or how could he allow this to happen to you, or look what you've been through. You were abused as a child. Your dad left you. Dude, God, you did all of that. I don't believe in you. And that was it for me. And for a lot of people I meet. But at that point, my mom would tell me about God and stuff, and I didn't know if I really believed for a fact in, like, and this whole Jesus thing or bought into it, but I believed that she believed it. Like she believed it. I met a lot of Christians over the years, and I didn't meet many that stood by it, were willing to die for it. I knew a lot that said, oh, praise God, praise Jesus, but when the rubber meets the road, they're not going to stand up for Jesus. They're not willing to die for Jesus, certainly. They won't even give up, certain things for Jesus,
Yep.
but to die for him, my mom was willing to die for Jesus. Like, I believed it. My mom was like, she was going to go to the jail. She was going to meet me she's been to dope houses, banging on doors, saying, devil, you will not have my son. My mom has had guns waved at her. I'm talking about a mom who was willing to die for Jesus and for her son. And
That's love, man.
it is, it is love. And at the same time, it's also, we're talking about selling points. If we're talking about a selling point, that's a selling point. Like, I believe that you believe this. And now I got to start asking myself why you believe it this strongly. Like if you believe it this strongly, something happened to you. And my mom had an encounter, dude, like for real. And my mom, and you can put it however you want, but you could say she was crazy enough to believe that the word of God was true. She was crazy enough to believe that, by his stripes we're healed. She was crazy enough to believe that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. She was crazy enough to believe that, when two or more are gathered together in his name, there I am in the midst of them. You can ask and I'll answer. My mom was crazy enough to believe all those things, and they were true, and they are true. And they're true today. And now I know that they're true. Back then, I just thought, man, she's crazy enough to believe this, and she really believes it. But it did something to me. To see somebody believe that strongly, you can't be the same after that.
Yeah.
I meet Christians all the time, even to this day. I'm in the Christian music industry. I preach. I'm an ordained minister, and I meet Christians that talk a good game. But I've seen it. When the rubber hits the road, they will bail quickly. And I'm talking about, they'll pull a post down on Facebook that they believe in strongly because 5 people told them, you offended me, or or whatever, and they'll pull it down, because,
Yep.
well, I just don't like confrontation. You literally just said Jesus loves you. That's what you posted on your Facebook. You got to pull that down. Imagine what you'll do in real life.
Wow.
Facebook is not real life.
Right.
Whole nother subject. But anyway, I'll let you process that and ask me any questions you have, and then we'll move from there. Because I know that was a lot of information.
No, you're good, man. Man, the thing that comes to my mind is just how strong of a woman your mom is and was at that time. Like, man, like I haven't even met her, obviously, and I have just the utmost respect for her. I mean, she was strong even before Christ, just having to do everything that she had to do to raise you and your brother. But then, like you said, like, when she became a Christian, it was legit. Like you said, there's so many Christians that are Christians just in name, and that's it. But she walked the walk and obviously did so enough for you to see that, man, something's different here, and I got to know more about this. So what did that look like for you, Joseph? I mean, you're still, as this is going on, it sounds like you're still caught up in addiction and just living a dangerous life, right? And so what did that look like, kind of seeing your mom go through this metamorphosis and becoming just more solid in her faith? What did that do to you during that time?
Well, it really made me realize that there was this new strength that she had found, that this new person that met her in the middle of her pain, in the middle of her tough times and gave her the strength to come into the jail, to come find me at a dope house, to uh, drop to her knees and pray in the middle of the night at 3 o'clock in the morning when I was high on the couch in the next room, just stumbling in from someplace, and hearing her praying these gut-wrenching prayers, and then still get up and go to work the next morning and work a 12-hour day. I knew that there was something bigger than her, and I couldn't deny it. Um, and then to still have joy, it changed, because I told you she didn't smile a lot. I mean, and I'm not putting my mom down. Once again, I got to say that it was just like just a concerned, stressed mom a lot. And now here, she has a son who's a drug addict, and she's standing on these promises of God. And here you could just see hope in her face, hope in her eyes. It's a whole different demeanor. And I was worse off than before, right? Like, I had a $400 a day cocaine addiction. I was getting arrested more. There was I was stealing, robbing to get high. I was lots of stuff, man. Overdosing, getting jumped, beat up. My mom having come to visit me in a hospital with Nike imprints on my face from getting stomped out in a dope house hotel room. You know, and here's my mom still finding a way to go on. And I knew that it wasn't in her own strength. I just knew it, man. I don't know how to tell you that I knew it. I just knew it.
Yeah.
And I just knew something was different about her. And the only thing my mom would always say is that it was God that gave her strength. God's the one who's guiding her. God's got a plan for you, son. God's got there's hope. And dude, it made me start thinking, man, about this whole like God thing, man, and Jesus, and what that looks like for someone like me. And my mom would tell me, because I would always tell her, I'm just a worthless drug addict. Like, if you're right, and there's this God, seeing somebody like me and the dirt I've done, because you got to remember that God's all knowing, God can see everything. And man, if God is all knowing and God could see everything, that means he sees things I've hid from you for years. That means he sees the worst of me. He's seen things, if I told you that I ever thought about, you'd never talk to me again. Those kinds of things. And he still loves me. That's hard to comprehend. But my mom would assure me that when I look in the mirror, those may be the things that I see, and those may even be the things that other people see when they look at me, maybe not to the depth, because they don't know everything that I've hidden, or kept. But God, even all knowing, when he looks at me, he doesn't see that. He sees the son who he loves. He sees his creation, and he knows the plans he has for me. And they're far beyond anything that I could come up with on my own. And my mom would instill that in me, like, and dude, it finally hit. It finally hit. I ended up homeless on the streets of Austin, Texas. I was strung out on dope. I didn't want my mom to see me, so I went to a rehab, and I ended up in Austin. And in that rehab, I ended up like flunking out. It was probably like my 14th rehab I'd flunked out of. By flunking out, I mean I went and got high while I was supposed to go to work or get a job or do something. And I ended up on the streets, and I just was homeless, and I didn't want to go back home, which is about an hour and a half, 2 hours away from Austin, in Victoria. And man, I was broken, dude. I wanted to die. I thought about suicide every day. And the only thing that kept me going was dope. Seriously. Like, I would take my life, this is what was going through my mind back then, is I would take my life right now if there wasn't a chance that I could get another hit of dope in about 30 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not giving dope credit for keeping me alive. Obviously, it was the reason I was homeless. But in that kind of warped thinking, dope was the reason I was alive. Dope was the reason I was living. Dope was killing me. But it was also the reason that I didn't take my own life, because I was running from high to high, living for high to high, and being empty. And so my mom found me in Austin, and she brought me back home. And it was at that, time, like not too long after that, I made a decision to take my life. I only had enough dope to like get through the night, and I used to tell my story a little bit different. It was embarrassing back then. I'm able to talk about things that I wasn't able to talk about then, and so it's not that my story's changed; it's that my vulnerability has changed.
Yeah, praise God.
And so, but because back then I'd say it was overdose, but honestly, I was trying to end my life. So my mom walked in, found me, called the paramedics, and in the back of an ambulance. God used those paramedics to save my life. Woke up in the intensive care unit, and that began this journey that I'm on now, with Jesus. I cried out to him in the back of an ambulance, not verbally, because I was hooked up to a bunch of tubes and stuff like that, but my mom was just praying. I could hear her praying while I was here. I was kind of holding my chest, and yeah, so that was beginning of this whole journey.
Dude, that is wild. And again, shout out to Mama Rojas, because man, where do you think you'd be, Joe, if it wasn't for her and all her interceding for you?
I wouldn't be here, that's for sure. I'd either be dead or in prison without my mom. There's no doubt. I mean, without God using my mom. I mean, I believe that my mom doesn't have the ability to save me and give me eternal life, but God used my mom to save my life. My mom literally saved my life. God used her to save my life. She loved me into the arms of Jesus.
Amen,
and
man.
Man, here I am.
Praise God, dude. I mean, praise God that you're still here, and man, God has been using you powerfully ever since. What did that look like for you, Joseph? I mean, you're in the ICU, and you're kind of making that decision to, hey, I'm done with this. Like, I'm living for you now, Jesus. As far as overcoming addiction, that's not an easy thing, obviously. So what did that look like for you?
It was about 2 years of still battling that addiction. I was different after giving my life to Jesus. I felt different. I believed now. I believed in this God who heals the brokenhearted, who saves and restores. I believed all that stuff, while at the same time still not finding the strength to put down cocaine and alcohol, and finding strength in moments and super weak in others. And that's what those 2 years kind of, looked like. I would do good for a month or two, like better than I'd ever done. And then I'd fall, and all it takes is that one time falling, and the devil in your ear, see, this ain't for you. You can't do it. Da 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 da. And but at that moment, my mom had already tasted that the Lord was good. She'd already seen that God had pulled me out of the pits of hell, on earth. I don't take that theologically, you know what I mean? But you know what I mean?
Yep.
I can see somebody writing an email. Well, technically, it's,
Oh man.
and so, no, man, like, but saying no to dope when you've said yes to it so many times is really hard, especially when, and I would suggest to anybody struggling with addiction, whether it's cocaine, alcohol, pornography, whatever it is, food, anything it is, don't think about the rest of your life. I know people tell you, think you got the rest of your life. You got the rest of your life. And I started thinking, man, for the rest of my life. And then I was like, immediately going to, for the rest of my life, I can never use cocaine again. For the rest of my life, I can never drink alcohol again. I can't do that. I can't even get through a day for the rest of my life, So every day I was fighting for the rest of my life, and that was wrong. That was wrong. And the reason why it was wrong, it's good in theory, but it was wrong because I'm putting all this pressure on myself for 15, 20 years down the road when really all I need to do is get through today. So instead of saying, for the rest of my life, I can never use cocaine again, which is what I was doing, and I kept relapsing because it just became too much for me. For the rest of my life, I'm going to let everybody down. There's so many years in the rest of my life, at least hopefully, and I'm going to let everybody down. And I just started focusing on getting today right. I mean, honestly, I started focusing on getting the next 2 hours right. Lord, give me strength to make it the next 2 hours and say no to this stuff that I want to say yes to, but don't want to say yes to, but need to say no to, but don't want to say no to, but no, I need to say no to, and want to. And like, you're conflicted, man. You want to say yes to it for all the wrong reasons, and you want to say no to it for all the right reasons. And it's like Paul said, the things I don't want to do are that which I do, and the things I do want to do are that which I don't. And that's what I was going through, was that. And then but I would make the wrong decision, but I never gave up. And my mom at that point had already tasted, like I said, that the Lord was good and seen what he'd already done. And she's like, it's like hitting a home run. Now you know you can do it. Like, this God really did this for me, and now she's getting kind of cocky about it. You know what I mean? Like, that's my God. And so she's praying like, nope, devil, you won't. I'm not going to get all bummed out that he ended up back there in that dope house last night. He's back here again today, and we're going to keep going. And my mom would just continue to pray. The people in the church would pray. And she'd be getting me in touch with people at the church and that kind of stuff. And those people helped me out a lot at Faith Family Church in Victoria, Texas. They showed me a lot of love and didn't judge me when I messed up. Came back stinking, smelling like dope and whatever else. They still loved me, and they continued to pray for me, lift me up. And eventually I was winning a lot more battles than I was losing. And before I knew it, I was set free. Now, I've seen people get set free in a day. I've had my own encounter of being healed, in just a few days. As a matter of fact, a lot of people don't know this, but and once again, we can talk about this, and I'm not worried about time constraints at this moment.
Okay.
But just so we know, so that way you don't feel rushed in any way.
Okay, sounds good.
Because this is important, super important. But I became an alcoholic after living for the Lord for 10 years. And that's something we can talk about. And God healed me, delivered me in 4 days. And with cocaine, it was different. It took 2 years, and I was set free. But I've seen people delivered in a day. I've seen people delivered in a week. I've seen people delivered instantly. But for some reason, it was a longer process for me, man. But people didn't give up on me, and I didn't give up because God had changed me, and I knew it. So,
man,
I began my journey, 2 years of that.
Wow, dude. Wow. I mean, a lot of things there, but what stands out to me there too is just the power of community, right? Like when we're overcoming something, like we need our people around us. We need our tribe. We need the church, not the building, but the people around us encouraging us. And like you said, just loving you for where you're at, not judging you, not condemning you, but hey, how can we love on you at this time? And I'm so thankful that the Lord put those people around you at that time and aided you in overcoming that addiction. And man, at what point then does Seventh Day Slumber become a thing? How soon or late after that you overcome your addiction did Seventh Day Slumber come into existence?
Well, Seventh Day Slumber came into existence kind of in the middle of that 2 years. Kind of embarrassing to say this, but I ended up in jail after I started Seventh Day Slumber. I got saved and immediately thought I needed to go preach to everybody. So I went to Bible college right off the bat. Some discipleship prior to it, not a lot of discipleship, but some discipleship. And because I hadn't had a lot of discipleship, I jumped straight into Bible college. I'm going to need everybody to know about Jesus. I had the best intentions. Like, I want everybody to know about Jesus. Look what he did for me. I still smelled like smoke. I still had, you could, and I mean that in the way I talked, in the things I had said and thought were okay. And I just wasn't using cocaine anymore. You got to remember, I went from a $400 a day cocaine addiction, selling dope in strip clubs and hotel rooms and the dark alleys and the hood and everything to like now not using cocaine anymore and not hanging out with those people anymore. And I was those people. But so for me, what I thought as me doing great was still needed some shaping. And so here I am in Bible college. I went to Christ for the Nations, started the band Seventh Day Slumber there. And then I ended up like making some mistakes in Bible college. Ended up being with someone who wasn't my wife, at the Bible college. And it happened, dude. We're going to shoot straight. Let's shoot straight all the way.
Yeah.
I messed around with a girl there at Bible college and got kicked out. But I loved it there at Bible college. I really did. I made a mistake, and it was my mistake to make. And so anyway, yeah, that kind of was like a real big bummer because I was in Seventh Day Slumber already. And, we weren't a big band at the time. We didn't even really have members. It was just kind of me at that point playing acoustic. My buddy, Bernie Dufresne, and I started the band together. He didn't want to be in it. He just wanted to go and record a demo and record a song he had written. So we did that. And then he gave me the name Seventh Day Slumber. He's like, hey, it's yours. It's not really my calling. I just wanted to do this with you. And he's still my friend to this day. He comes to Seventh Day Slumber concerts with his kids now.
Awesome.
And yeah, he's literally one of my best friends. I love him. I love him and his family. And he's never asked for a dime. He's never asked for nothing. I would give it to him if he wanted it. You know what I mean? BJ, if you're watching, don't ask for that much. Spotify. But no. But anyway, no. It's crazy because I got kicked out. I felt like I let myself down, my mom down, the church back home down, and then you got to say it was because you had sex out of wedlock, and it's not even a girl you were dating, and that's embarrassing, man. It's embarrassing saying it now, but it happened, and so I ended up going back home to Victoria, Texas, and got messed around with the wrong crowd again, and ended up back in jail. So I stole a car from the daughter of one of the deacons in the church, my mom's church, my church, uh, from him and his wife, who my mom was close to, and I knew their daughter, but like I borrowed her car and never brought it back, kind of thing. And I got arrested in her car because they had to report it stolen. And obviously, you can't blame them. I mean, I took their daughter's car. I mean, obviously, I borrowed it, but I took it and went and got high with it. So I got arrested, and I ended up doing almost a year. And dude, when I got out, but what's crazy about that? You talk about community and stuff.
Yep.
The very same man I stole his daughter's car, he was part of the jail ministry, and he ministered to me when I was locked up.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing, man.
Do you imagine, like, so you hurt my kids, dude? Now I've been a Christian for, 25 years or whatever, but you hurt my kids. I got to be careful what I say on camera right now. Like, those are my babies, man. And my oldest is 21, and he will always be my baby. But like, they mean everything to me. And I can't imagine this. And he loved his daughter. I can't imagine, having one of your kids hurt and then ministering to that person. Now, I guess I can, because I have had to minister to someone that has hurt my children, but not like stealing a car from them and kind of like doing them dirty. But anyway, yeah, man, like even talking about it now, like that's, sorry, like I kind of took me off to, because it's just like I'm comprehending a lot of this stuff, and you just go, man, that's a lot of love for Jesus. Because I don't think he loved me. Maybe he loved me in the Lord. But you got to think, man, this dude like stole my daughter's car, man. It broke her heart because she liked him. And he didn't even like her. He was using her for a car and didn't bring it back.
Yeah. Like,
I'll put hands on you if you did that to my daughter. I don't have a daughter, by the way. So hypothetically, you know, and that's the ghetto in me coming out, but at the end of the day, it changed me. Those moments change people. And I've happened to have the pleasure, the honor, the blessings of having many moments like that from people that spoke into my life in ways that, and maybe somebody else wouldn't have taken the time, So I got out of jail and I never looked back. At that, I got out and I was like, dude, never again. I was going to church when I was in jail. I was following all the rules, everything I could, man. I got into like 2 fights when I was in jail early on, and it almost cost me being there longer. From then it was like you could say whatever you wanted to me. I wasn't gonna, as long as you put hands on me or anything like that, you could say something to me, and I was not even gonna look your way, because I was focused on Jesus, getting out and serving him. And I got out, dude, and I never looked back, man. I just started hitting. I met my wife, Lori, and not too long after that. We've been married 23 years. She's my best friend in the whole world. And
praise God,
she's
man.
awesome.
How did you guys meet?
Knockout.
How did you guys meet?
So she went to the same Bible college that I went to at Christ for the Nations. But I had moved. So when I got out of jail, I decided, dude, I'm going back to Dallas, and I'm not leaving with my tail between my legs. Dude, I'm going back. And while I can't go back to Christ for the Nations, I can move down the road from it. And plus, it was the only place that I could afford to, because Christ for Nations is in the hood, man. It's in the ghetto. Or I don't know what the place is like now, but it was called Oak Cliff. And like people that know Dallas, like Oak Cliff, it's while my wife was at Bible college, her and her sister were going to Bible college, they were doing this thing called YFM, Youth for the Nation, and anyway, there was a shooting while they were outside of the college, and somebody from the Christ for the Nations, not far from her sister, got shot. Like, that's how in the hood it was, right? And so for me, I couldn't afford any place else, so I had to go live in Oak Cliff, and I got me a little apartment, in Oak Cliff, and this dude, and then this, like, I was using this little studio to do music, and it was like a ratty place. But I started producing a worship album for this guy named Aaron Smith, who went to Christ for the Nations. And anyway, Aaron wanted to not go back to Arizona for the summer, so he asked if he could stay with me, and I said, yeah. I had already put together another little band at that point, Seventh Day Slumber. Like I said, it was pretty much me with my acoustic or my electric, and I just hired musicians, but I had got a good little group of guys together this time. And we had a show the day that Aaron was going to move into my apartment, and I walked out of the bathroom, and I was putting my hair all in spikes and everything, and I seen this beautiful girl in my living room, and I'm like, I know she ain't with Aaron. You know what I mean? And so, no, I'm just kidding. But I was like, I saw this beautiful girl in my living room, and I was like, who are you? And she's like, who are you? And I said, I live here, and she's like, well, my name's Lori, and I'm helping my sister, and I and a bunch of friends are helping Aaron move in. I guess this is your spot. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, cool, great to meet you. And then I was like, whoa. I told my buddy Aaron, I said, that's my wife. Because I hadn't dated anybody like for a whole year or any of that stuff. I was like, and I don't mean because I was locked up. When I got out, obviously I didn't date anybody when I was locked up either. You know what I mean? And so
good to clarify.
Another story. No, I'm just
yeah.
But now here we are. Like after I get out, I'm like, dude, I'm focused on God. I don't care about anything but serving the Lord. God, I want to make you proud, and that was it. And so for a whole year, but then I see her, and I was like, I told Aaron, that's my wife. And he goes, yeah, probably a lot of guys say that. And I'm like, no, that is my wife, bro. And he's like, all right, cool, man. And anyway, I asked her if she wanted to go to that concert. That I said, hey, I don't know what y'all are doing. She's like, oh, we're getting ready to go get on a boat and stuff, like with some friends and stuff. And I was like, oh, y'all should come to this concert. And she's like, yeah, no, probably not. And I was like, all right, cool. So I got done playing the concert in downtown Dallas, came back to my apartment, and there were some college kids. They were in there with Aaron, and I told them, yeah, watch movies, do whatever you want. And then from that day on, we talked every day and until we got married. And we didn't date. So like, we went on one date, and that was grabbing a coffee and walking around the park in Dallas, where we lived at, and or where I lived at. And then one day I told her, we were all watching a movie, and I don't know what movie it was, but everybody kind of walked outside of my apartment on the balcony and just in the front, and it was just kind of her and I. It was a little awkward because here we're there, and I just said, she said, what are you thinking, or something, and you know how you do that, and I'm like, well, what are you thinking? She said, well, look, if you could tell me anything that you're thinking right now, you could just tell me and have the bravery to tell me, what would you say? And I said, I would marry you right now. If you would marry me, I would marry you. Like, I've been wanting to say that to her. And she said, I would marry you. And then I was like, wow. Are you kidding me? Like, dude, I didn't expect her to, but she did. And then 3 months later, we were married. And we talked to her parents, and her dad knew my past and stuff, but he also knew that, like, he's a pastor, and her mom, like, she always just showed me love. I met them because they came to visit her, and even though we weren't dating, we were friends. So I met them, and I took her dad around town doing stuff because I had a car, and so but we asked them if we could meet with them in my ratty little office studio thing that I was paying like $50 a month for or something like that. And they came and I asked them for their daughter's hand in marriage. Of course, I think I know they already knew what I was going to ask them, but we hadn't really talked about it. And they showed up and I asked them and the dad was like, well, I mean, what if I told you no? And I said, then I wouldn't do it. I mean, I know that the girl that I'm supposed to marry, I'm going to have her parents' blessing and approval because I just feel like that's what God has promised me. And I know that's not everybody has. Some people's parents hate them, but the couple is right. For me, I just already been through a lot of pain in that area with parents and things like that, that I was just like, I want the parents to like me because it's too hard. And on the daughter and whatever. And so anyway, I said I would wait until you gave me permission to marry your daughter. And they said, okay, well, we're going to pray about it. And I was like, I hope they really actually pray. And it's not one of those, I'm going to pray about it just to tell you no when I already know it's a no.
Right.
So they were walking out and here's how I found out that I could marry the daughter is that I could hear them moving around still down the hallway. And they came back and they said, it was my birthday that day. And they said, oh, we forgot to give you your birthday card. And I opened it up and it was like this. It was one of those cartoon cards where there's like a cat tumbling around or whatever. And
Yep.
it was, I forgot what those cards are called, but they're kind of funny cards. And I opened it and said, today on your birthday, we give you what is most precious to us. And that's our daughter. And that's how I
Dude.
found out that I was able to marry their daughter.
My goodness, man. That's amazing. Best birthday present ever, right?
Dude, gift that keeps on giving.
Well, yeah. I mean, literally, here you are. What would you say, 23 years later?
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
what was that like, again, with your upbringing, man, becoming a husband? You never had that example of, hey, this is how, let me rephrase it. You never had a healthy example of this is how you be a husband. This is how you treat your wife. What was that like for you? Were there any growing pains with that? Just learning how to love this gift that God has given you?
Well, Lori honestly made it so much, I don't want to say so much easier than I see in a lot of relationships, but because marriage isn't easy, but to me, like she she just met me where I was. And she never ever looked down on me. In 23 years of marriage, my wife Lori has never looked down on me, even with putting on weight and all the different things that I'm trying to get a healthy lifestyle going and get the weight off, and I will in Jesus' name. But she's never looked at me like I wasn't attractive, even when I put on 100 pounds. She never looked at me, even when I ended up an alcoholic 10 years into our marriage. She never looked at me like I was the worst person ever. She's always been someone who has supported me and believed in me, and she knows that I support her and believe in her, that I don't see her as Joseph, the lead singer of Seventh Day Slumber's wife, or yeah, that's just my wife, Lori, who handles whatever. Like, I love her with everything, every part of my being. And she loves me the same way. We're both in 100%. I'm all in with her. I've given her every vulnerable part of me. I've given her things, and she knows things about me that she could hurt me with, she could end me with, and I trust her with every vulnerable part of me, and she trusts me with every vulnerable part of her. And because we love each other that deeply, everything I do is, I do everything I can to not hurt her. I have hurt her over the years, and but when you love someone that deeply, you do what you can to not hurt them. And my wife has done everything she can to not hurt me, to be there for me, to look past my faults, to all those things. But loving her was not hard at all. Learning to love her was not even a thing. I loved her from day one. I love her
Yeah.
more now than I did when I met her. Like,
Come
my
on.
love for her has only grown, and it will only continue to grow. Um, and it doesn't mean that she's perfect, although in my eyes she is. But she's she's done things that have hurt me, and we you just can't go through 23 years without making mistakes, hurting, saying things you wish you could take back. I I uh I tell people there was this tree in Victoria in the park, and that tree was the one that everybody the zoo was right across the street from where this like picnic area was in Victoria, and then that big old tree, and that tree had all the carvings of like Joni Loves Chachi, and whatever. That's my age coming out right there. But whatever, and Annie and Michael Forever with the four, and it
Yep.
had all those. I mean, they were carved in there, and I remember having this birthday party. And I don't know, it was one of my cousins having, I'm Mexican, so there's probably like 80 cousins, you know what I mean? And so it was like they're having this birthday party, and there's that tree, right? It's like close to that tree, and on that tree was "FU" real big, like written on that tree. It wasn't even real big. It was like, it was big enough. And I was like, and I cussed back then. Like I was, like, but dude, it was just stood out on this tree. And I'm like, man, here's this tree, dude. It has all kinds of I love yous or whatever. And then maybe a line through it, because it broke up and you're back now, but whatever. But that FU, dude, it just didn't feel right. And so on this tree is so much beautiful stuff. And then there's that one FU. And the one thing out of all this beautiful stuff that stands out to me is that carved FU on there. And it's hard to get that gone. And eventually you can carve over it, and eventually and time can wear it off, and you can add something else. And I looked at my marriage like that my wife was this beautiful tree, and I want only I love yous on there. And unfortunately, for a lack of a better way of saying it, I've put a few FUs on there. And I wished I could take them back. And my goal is to make sure that the I love yous far outweigh the other. And that's what I've strived to do in my marriage. And I believe in 23 years, I can say there's a lot more I love yous on the tree, but that's marriage to me, is doing everything I can to uplift her, let her know she's loved, let her know that I'm willing to die for her, but I'm willing to live for her too. That's why I'm trying to take care of my health, and I had to, even with alcohol, like I couldn't believe I fell into drinking after being, after everything that God has done for me. But I was hurting real bad, man. And the music industry can be tough, and we can call it the Christian music industry, um, which I have my thoughts about that, but it's hard, man. You see a lot of stuff. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and it'll taint you. I've seen it in so many artists and so many different, that kind of stuff, booking agents and different things. But I fell into alcohol, man, like by just wanting to. You hear so many stories of suicide every night. People trusting you with their vulnerable stories and stuff, and my heart is big. Like, I want to help them all, and I took it home with me. It would stay with me at night, and to the point that it started really weighing down on me, and I needed that to stop, and God was not moving fast enough for me. When I said, God, I need this to stop, and it didn't stop right away, that's what I mean by God wasn't moving fast enough for me. God is not late. He's not early.
Yep.
And it is true. He is always on time.
Mm-hmm.
But I needed it now. It's like that commercial. It's my money and I want it now, or whatever.
Yep.
Dude, I needed it now. And I wasn't willing to sit through the pain, or really I wasn't willing to take the steps that it takes, like invest in my own healing, by putting everything aside and going and praying, reading my Bible, doing all the things that I started alienating myself, and just dealing with it. And finally, the bottle became a daily habit for me. I'll let you process that and ask any questions that you have.
Yeah. No, dude, I just love how real you're being here, because I mean, I think some people have the misconception that you give your life to Christ and then boom, everything's great. And all those old addictions are gone, but man, like that's not always the case. Right. And those addictions can morph into different kind of addictions. Obviously you weren't doing dope anymore, but now you were looking for something else to take away that pain and to take away that hurt. I mean, I work as a marriage and family therapist, and I know what it's like to like take on other people's trauma and to deal with just all these horrific stories on a daily basis. Right. And so for you, it sounds like, man, like I can't handle this. And alcohol was just kind of that thing that allowed you to get rid of it, that pain as quick as possible. What did that struggle look like for you, Joe, as far as like how long did that go on for? How were you eventually able to get delivered? You mentioned earlier, like God delivered you in 4 days. What did that look like?
Yeah. So for several years, Lori and I have been married 23 years, and that went on. I mean, it wasn't bad until it was like really bad. And that was like 3 years where it was like bad. Before the other 5 years, or 4 years before that, so about 7 years, about 4 years was like, you wouldn't even know that I had drinks on on days off. And that's how it started. It started as just, man, I'm just gonna have something to drink. I'm not trying to get drunk. I convinced myself, and my wife doesn't drink. So she's like, honey, I'm not trying to judge you, but it's like, you don't need that. And, but I did it. And then I'd be like, see, nothing's broken. I didn't, I'm not in jail. It's like, it's okay, whatever. And so, my wife would just pray for me. She would just pray for me. That was what she did, and she always looked up to me. My wife, Lori, she always looks to me as like, she looks to me for advice. She looks to me for not just spiritual advice, but things going on in her life, or what she's, dealing with outside of our marriage. Like maybe, somebody she's talking to or whatever. Like she'll come to me for advice. She's always looked to me as like, I really value your opinion and what you think. And that never changed, which is crazy that didn't change, because I got to a point where I was drinking every day. And that happened like probably 3 years into that. And I was playing Christian concerts, and I had all these things of like, of course, I got to preface this by saying I never lost my passion for Jesus, and I never lost my passion for like wanting to help people. I wanted to help people every night. That was the only thing keeping me on that stage. It wasn't for fame. People already know who our band was at that time. We already had a Devil War. We've already done all that. It wasn't the fame. I cared about these people. I want to help them. I want to serve God, but here I am trying to keep myself together. And dude, so I'd go play a concert, then after that I'd sign autographs and stuff, go back to the bus, and our whole crew is tearing down. My wife is our tour manager, so she would be like handling the affairs there, and I'd be in the back of the bus and pouring a drink just to take that pain away. And so it got pretty bad, to the point where now I wasn't having a couple of drinks. I was drinking myself to sleep. And in the morning, I'd have to get up and take a shot of whiskey or bourbon. Um, Not necessarily drink all day, but just to take a shot, just to not be shaking. And then I would go and play concerts, minister, and I feel like the biggest hypocrite in the world. Even though I still love Jesus and still love the people, but I'd be like, well, I don't drink on stage. I don't, drink before a show, other than in the morning to not shake or whatever. Like I don't, it's yeah. You have all these things, dude. Like you tell yourself, I'm still taking care of my wife, Lori. I still take care of my kids. My kids still look up to me. They still love their daddy. Like you just go through all that stuff, but really what you're telling yourself is, dude, I hate myself right now. I hate myself right now. I can't believe that I let my kids see their daddy drunk. I can't believe I let my wife down like I did. I told her I would help her with this thing or that thing. Dude, that's what you're really thinking. But when you're talking to other people that know you drink, you're like, man, I know I'm there for my kids. I'm there for my wife. I'm there for you're just trying to you know, you know, you know. And I got to the point where uh and I haven't talked about this a lot. I haven't talked about this a lot, or at all. Only a couple times. Um, but I got to a point where I was sick and I had to go to the doctor. And they told me that I had 5 years to live. That I had cirrhosis of the liver, and it was in stage. And that's a whole story. But my wife was in the next room, and I didn't even want her there, because when they called me back after an ultrasound and everything, I knew that it wasn't good. And especially with my drug past and everything, I knew my body was already jacked up. And uh, dude, the doctor told me that, and I just felt like my body go kind of numb. And I said, I can't even tell my wife. Can you tell her? And he pulled her into the room and told her, and she was devastated, obviously, and said, well, it's this like 5 years, like that. He's like, a lot of people don't make it past two with end stage cirrhosis of the liver, and I was like thinking, how am I gonna tell my kids? Look at my wife. Like I don't even. My kids are so close to me, and dude, I got home, And I just, it was crazy. I had to play a concert that, like, I had to drive that night to go to a concert, and then I had time off for like 2 months or something. And so I went and did that, but all the trip down there, I was watching my wife Lori sleep in the back, and I just kept saying out loud, I was crying, man. I just kept saying, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, man." And I was praying, and I got home, and dude, I was like, I knew I couldn't drink any before that anyway. Like, I was gonna stop drinking. It was 2 months where I had made my mind up. If I can't stop in the first week, then I'm going to check myself into rehab. I had already made up my mind. That was before I went to the doctor. But anyway, I knew I only had that one concert left, which I normally don't even include that in the story. Some of the times it doesn't really matter, but um, it was all a blur, really.
Yeah.
But I came home that night after playing the concert, drove back. It was only like 3.5 hours away. Came back, and I locked myself in the room, and I said, if I'm not done drinking by this, in this few days, I'm going to rehab. I don't care what Twitter says. I don't care what Facebook says. I don't care what anybody says. You're getting your husband back. My kids are going to have their dad for at least as long as I'm going to be here. And I'm going to make it the best 2 to 5 years as I can be. And I went in there, and I ended up shaking all over the place, throwing up. I had the worst night of my life. Pain, my body hurt, my life hurt. The next day was even worse. And then the third day, I started feeling better. And then on day 4, I was completely healed. Like,
Wow.
healed, man. Like, no shakes, no, like, nothing, dude. Like, no, I didn't crave it. I didn't want it. I was healed. I got chills thinking about it. And
Dude, me too.
And dude, I told Lori, I said, I'm healed. I'm healed. And I wasn't talking about my liver. I was talking about, like, I'm healed. I'm done with that. And I'm ready to start making everything up to you as much as time as I have. My mom was praying for me. My wife was praying for me. Everybody was praying for me, that in our circle. My brother-in-law, Jeremy, who was our guitar player, he was praying for me. He's the only one in the band that knew, because he's my brother-in-law. My wife and his wife are sisters, and he's been with me 20 years. But well, back then he hadn't been with me 20 years, but you know what I mean? Like, he's been with me 20 years now. He's family. He'll be with me forever. But anyway, so I changed everything. Like, obviously didn't drink anymore. I started eating right. Even started drinking a gallon of lemon water a day, like real lemons. And because I heard it was supposed to cleanse you out, and like, I was reading stuff. It says drink 3 cups of coffee a day, because there's something in the coffee that will at least help your liver. You can't reverse cirrhosis of the liver. It's done once you have it. But whatever, you can at least prolong a little bit or whatever. Well, I ended up going to the doctor like a month later, maybe, or a few weeks later. And the doctor said to me that he's like, you still have cirrhosis of the liver, but you're in a compensated state, which means that your liver is functioning normal now. And it's still got all the stuff on it. And as long as you don't drink, you could live 20, 25. You could live a next to normal life expectancy. You're in a compensated state right now. And I was like, dude, I need a second opinion. And he's like, well, no, I mean, you can get one, but I'm the best in the business. Like, and he's like known like one of the top people in that field.
Yeah.
They went and put me under the knife and checked to see if there was any, I forgot what they're called. It's like varicose veins, but inside of you. And if they bust, you can bleed out. And a lot of people have to get rubber bands tied around in their veins and stuff. If you have cirrhosis, it helps to keep them alive longer. So they put me under to see how it looked and everything. And I didn't have any. And dude, so that was years ago, by the way. So here we are, I think 6 years now into this. You know, my enzymes are normal. My liver enzymes are normal. I'm still fat. You know what I mean? I'm working on that. You know what I mean? But I'm eating right. I just eat too much and at the wrong times. And plus, I'm in my late 40s. It's not as easy to. I look at a piece of cake, dude, and I'm like 30 pounds heavier. You know what I mean?
That metabolism,
dude. And then plus I've destroyed it by cocaine and alcohol and crazy stuff. I've lived my life jacked up. But for the most part, now I can say that, you know, for the most part, my life has been lived serving the Lord, you know, and serving my family. My kids saw God move. My kids saw a miracle. While I hated that my kids ever saw their daddy drunk on the ground, because they always looked up to me. And they still do. They want to be just like me, even now. And that's a scary thing. It made me. My kids want to be like me. I better step my game up. And so my kids know that Jesus healed me, but my kids also know that their daddy fought for them so they could have me around. And the same thing, my wife knows that. She knows that her husband, that I fought hard to be here for her. And so now it's just about eating healthy. I've been drinking a gallon of lemon water every day since that day. You know, maybe there have been a couple days where I've missed it, but not really. Like a gallon of lemon water a day. I don't know if that's what did it. I believe it was prayer. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But that sure doesn't hurt. And
right.
Yeah, dude. So, you know, I got 6 years off of that, man, and something like that, you know, and I'm ministering. I'm stronger, better outlook, positive. Like, I know who God is. I know what He's capable of. I've known it all along, but being healed from a cocaine addiction, a $400 a day cocaine addiction, you know, 10 years into that, it can sometimes end up being like this story you tell. And not that I ever wanted to end up an alcoholic, but God has used that even to just reinforce and remind me that He is still God. The same God that delivered me from a $400 a day cocaine addiction. Now, I don't encourage people to go and do something jacked up so you can be reminded who God is. That was just a horrible decision I made.
Right.
And the devil hated me. I mean, hates me. And he didn't just hate me, he hates me now. And he wants to, you know, take those things in your life and continue to push them into your ear. And what the devil meant for evil, you know, God, He used it for good.
Romans 8:28, it says, you know, all things work together for the good of those that love God. And dude, that's like you right there. That's your story, man. I mean, this is one of the most incredible things I personally have ever heard. And I'm not just saying that. Like, that's amazing to go from end stage cirrhosis to now, dude, you know, as long as you take care of yourself, yeah, you can live a pretty normal life.
Yeah.
What? Like, that's God right there. Yeah.
Yeah. And have been. It's crazy though, because they put me on all this medication, and here I am. So on all of this medication, and it's you know, pill for this, pill for that. Now you got diabetes, which is, by the way, the best thing that you have. The rest of the stuff is worse. You know, and you're like, oh, I wish it was just diabetes that I have. You know, like that kind of thing. That's how bad it was. To then going back to the doctor in weeks and then going, oh, here, you don't need diabetes medicine anymore. Wait, your blood pressure's now normal. Wait, you're still overweight, but dude, you're losing a few pounds. man, this is normal. That's normal. Wow, your liver enzymes have gone down. Wow, they're normal. To like now, I'm like taking one pill in the morning and one pill at night. From 5 pills in the morning and like 3 or 4 at night to literally one pill in the morning, which helps with water retention. And then the one pill at night, which helps, and they're low doses which helps with water retention as well, because with cirrhosis of the liver, that's what you deal with. But I don't really have that. The doctor just has me on that just to, but like I said, man, that is God. That is God all day. I can talk about drinking a gallon of water a day, which you should. I can talk about drinking the coffee every day, which don't have too many, but 3 a day is what I'm supposed to have, at least 3 a day. And sometimes I have 4. But like, those are all cool things to do and helpful, eating right. But it is God who gave me this, I don't even want to say second chance. I don't even want to tell you how many chances I've had. But,
Yeah.
But dude, I'm like, I'm living, dude.
You're living, man. And man, I just think of like your family too, and just the love that you have for your family. Like you said, like you were fighting for them. Your kids saw that, and they know that you were fighting for them. And I mean, even just going back to Lori again, I've never met her. I've been communicating with her through email, but man, just like pictures that you post of her and just like clips on vlogs and stuff like that. It is so clear the joy of the Lord is in her. Like she seems like just so joyous. And your kids, man, again, I haven't met him, but I saw the post you made yesterday where, was it Sage that was just praying with a guy at McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine how proud you were as a father to see that. And yeah, man, becoming a father, 3 boys and again, not having that example of how to be a good father. What's that journey been like for you? And obviously you're learning every day, but man, you're clearly doing a good job because all 3 of your boys seem to be doing amazing.
Man, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, all 3 of my sons. It was my oldest son who sent me that picture of my youngest son praying for. They were downtown Nashville, and he was praying for a guy. Just felt like he needed to pray for that man. And dude, all 3 of my sons live for Jesus. My oldest son, Blaze, is the drummer for Seventh Day Slumber. Our drummer was his drum teacher, and now Blaze is drumming for Seventh Day Slumber. My middle son is about to go to YWAM. He most likely has a job as a high school pastor, waiting for him when he comes back from YWAM. And my youngest son competes in jiu-jitsu tournaments, but he ministers and goes on trips to go. He was the one praying for that man at McDonald's. He goes on trips to go and minister in the Dominican Republic and different places with his church. And so or with his youth group. And so I couldn't be more proud. I didn't have any kind of, there was no, there's no handbook anyway, passed down, but at least some people have their parents who were good parents to kind of pass that down. I've got my mom, which I believe a lot of the way that I love is from my mom. But as far as a handbook goes and being a dad, that's not something my mom could teach me. That's something that God instills in a person like me who has nobody else to look to. It is God, the ultimate father. And that's to still have this relationship with my kids after they've seen me make questionable decisions with alcohol, and them still just look up to me, want to know everything that I'm thinking, and in whatever it is that they're doing, and to have a wife that still supports me like that, dude, it's a God filter, it's like there's this thing in when we record music, they're called plugins. And you can also, graphic designers have them. You can just put a plug in or like filters,
Yep.
whatever, Instagram or whatever. And like, sometimes I feel that way. Sometimes I feel like the music of my life at some points isn't so good. Some of it is the music of my life. But some of it at some points isn't so good. But when God puts that plug in, that God filter, that God plug in, people see you differently than maybe you would think they should see you for some of the things you've said or did or acted. And the Holy Spirit of God, man, it's just, I can't say, all I can say is God, but God. And,
Yeah.
but I'm thankful, man. I do work hard to be a good father. I do work hard to be a good husband. I don't just go, God, make me a good husband. God, make me a good father. God, make me a good person. God, if you took alcohol away from me, I would never drink again. God, if you would take the addiction away, then I wouldn't have to drink. God, why don't you just take no, dude, you got to invest in your own healing. You got to invest in your own relationships. You got to invest in your own, like, dude, but I'll tell you this, if you take a step towards him, he'll run to you.
Amen.
And that's how it was for all of these different things with being a father. I didn't just go, well, God, I need you to make me a good father. I worked at it. I worked hard at being a good father, and I modeled me being a father after, reading the Word of God and knowing what a father is supposed to be, and then having a mom who, loved me like that, like the Bible and those kinds of things. But I worked at it. And same thing with being a husband. Like, okay, man, I need to quit saying dumb crap, man. Like I just said something stupid again. Like I got to learn from this because I just did it again. Then I always tell her I'm sorry, but am I going to do this? Like every 5 minutes I have to say I'm sorry. Eventually she's going to go, you don't mean sorry, because you keep doing it. So,
Right.
so that's just something you say in order so you can feel better at night, but you're not changing. Like, no, dude, I'm going to say sorry if I mess up, but I'm going to try to limit those mess ups until I'm not doing that, until I change that behavior. Like, I work at it. And then at those points is when I start making the decision that I'm going to work at it, like, then I see this God activate. Like, God gives me the strength to not say this or to not do that, or to not say something when I feel like maybe she said something that hurt my feelings. And now but I probably took it wrong, And so like, it's like God gave me that. Same thing with alcohol. Like, God, I have to drink right now because you're not taking this from me. Like God, and it's like, you don't have to pick up that bottle. You're making a decision to pick it up. You just don't want to sit through the pain. And so when I finally was like, dude, you know what? I'm going to lock myself in the room. I'm going to sit through the pain no matter how much it hurts and no matter how long it takes. I'm going to sit through the pain. And when I finally made the decision that I was going to sit through the pain no matter how long it took and no matter how much it hurt, when I made that decision, it didn't last that long. It didn't last that long. God just wanted me to make that step, invest in my own healing. Like the woman with the issue of blood. She went through a crowd. They said the crowd was pressed in upon Jesus. And she had been everywhere to try to fix herself. The woman with the issue of blood, dude. But she went and was told she was unclean. She was looked at, ostracized. A lot of different things that happened back then. You know what I mean? And if you just really study that text. And so, but to push in and to get in there just to touch the hem of his garment. Like, she invested in her own healing. And when it wasn't comfortable for her to be in that place, when they said pressed in him, and there were a lot of people pressed in on him. But her faith alone, healed her. And that's how I feel with a lot of things, is like, if you'll just press in, if you'll just invest in your own healing, if you'll just take that step, watch what God will do.
Dude, I love how you phrase that, because sometimes God can deliver you from things just like that, but oftentimes he wants us to co-labor with him, right? Like you said, like, we got to put in the work too. with some of these things. It's not a works-based mentality, but we're called to co-labor with Christ. And I just think it's so cool, Joe, how just your story with you didn't have a dad growing up, and now you get to be a dad, and you are a dad to three awesome young men. I believe the number one epidemic in our country is fatherlessness, and your boys will never have to know what it's like to not have a dad in their life. And dude, you've been more than gracious with your time. We've barely touched on the band. We'll have to have you on for.
Yeah, I was gonna say we need to do a follow up on, on the band and stuff like that. Seventh Day Slumber, the nuts and bolts of it are that. And speaking of dad, that's what I'm gonna do, or else we do it now. I'm gonna take my kids downtown and my wife downtown, and we're going to go and just enjoy our day together. And, but the nuts and bolts, Seventh Day Slumber have been around over 20 years, and 25 years, and, longer than that, I think, but I'm not trying to give my age away, but it's been a long time. And so here we are with new music. I call it Seventh Day Slumber 2.0 because even though we've had many different members in the band, I've kind of always been Seventh Day Slumber, really. And then Jeremy, my brother-in-law, who was with us for 20 years and hasn't been with the band for some time now, but also I call it 2.0 because we have a new guitar player now who's from my hometown. He's my son's age. And so it's like this younger group of dudes. And the reason it's 2.0 this time, even though we've had other band members, is because this is the first time the music has kind of changed. Like Seventh Day Slumber Jeremy and I have always been the primary songwriters for all these years. And, before I met Jeremy, it was just kind of trash rock. And then we got better, when Jeremy came in, and him and I started writing together, and we created this like writing, not magic, but this cool writing thing happened. And so anyway, for 20 years we wrote hit songs and did a lot of amazing things. But now my son being in the band and being one of the primary writers, and Weston, our guitar player, being one of the primary writers, and them being kind of like not kind of like best friends, being best friends and kind of like the same style and that kind of thing. And me writing with them, this level it's still Seventh Day Slumber, but there's another level to this. Even our worship stuff is at another level. So our metal stuff is at another level, our hard rock stuff's at another level, and our worship stuff's at another level. And we're getting general market success. About to tour with Fozzy, which is Chris Jericho. We're talking about wrestlers earlier. Chris Jericho, and that I want to come back and tell you how cool that tour was. It starts in 2.5 weeks. So
where can people go to find information on if you're going to be coming to them or not?
Yeah. So seventhDaySlumber.com, spelt out SEVENTH. SeventhDaySlumber.com just means God created the earth in 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested. And so you can go to seventhDaySlumber.com, or you can just look us up, Seventh Day Slumber, on any social media site, and we're on there. We answer our emails from our site, and we answer our messages from our social media. So come say hello to us, and come. We would love to hang out with you. We hang out with everybody. So after the shows, we go and sign autographs. Doesn't matter if you VIPs or not. None of that stuff matters. If you are there, you'll more than likely get to meet us, shake our hand, and get a picture, and we'll hang out with you.
Amen. Check them out, guys. You won't regret it. And man, I'm with you. Like, all your stuff has been good, but like you said, the stuff you're putting out now, Death by Admiration, Surviving the Wasteland, like, whew, it's a whole nother level, my friend. And man, I'm here for it. I'm loving this. And dude, I've loved this. Last question for you, Joe. I know it's kind of a big question, but as you look back at everything we just talked about, as you look back at your life, when it comes to the goodness of God throughout all of that, what stands out to you?
How he's never left me when anybody else should have or would have. how he still continues to open doors for me, to bless my family, even when there have been times where I wasn't faithful to him. He was faithful to me. And I don't just mean in a like you get to go to heaven kind of way. Like, I mean, like he blesses me here and still continue. Like, just me getting to go to heaven is good enough. Like, I'm like, I get to go to heaven, and it's eternal life. That gift, I don't need any other gifts, but God continues to pour out blessings on me, and sustain me, like, and my family when I don't deserve it, and that's what stood out to me over all these years. God has seen every mistake I've ever made, every horrible thing I've ever thought about, and he has not changed his mind about me. And that's mind-boggling to me.
He's such a good dad, man. And in closing, dude, I just really feel the Lord wants me to share this with you. And I've as we're talking, I've been having this image of just God, daddy, papa, and he's calling you to come to him. And I mean, compared to him, I mean, you're just a little kid, right? And he's coming to you and he's putting his hands on your shoulders and he's looking you square in the eye and he says, I am so proud of you. Well done, good and faithful servant. I just wanted to encourage you with that,
Wow.
man. Like in spite of everything that you've had to go through and all the struggles that you've had, even being a Christian, like his love for you has not changed. He sees what you're doing. He knows your heart and he is so proud of you, dude. So be blessed by that.
Dude, thank you so much for saying that and sharing that with me, man. It means a lot.
Not a problem, man. Well, Joel, this has been an absolute honor to have you on the show. I would love to stay in touch with you. And yeah, like you said, we'll have to get you on for part 2 after the tour sometime.
Let's do it, man. I'll have some tour stories.
Sounds good, man. You take care.
All right, you too.